The patrol ship Righteous Compliance drifted through the empty corridor of space near the disputed border zones. Inside the bridge, Commander Thrall leaned back in his command chair, mandibles clicking with satisfaction. Another routine day of enforcing galactic law on the newer species who still didn't understand how things worked out here. His second officer chirped from the sensor station. "Commander, we have a small vessel approaching. Single occupant. Human registry." Thrall's eyes narrowed. Humans? The newest species to join galactic society, barely 2 decades into space travel, and already they acted like they owned the stars. He'd dealt with their kind before, arrogant, emotional, always complaining about their rights and protocols. Time to remind them who actually ran things out here. Intercept course. Standard enforcement stop. The human transport was small, clearly military but lightly armed. An easy target. Within minutes, they'd locked it down with tractor beams and forced it to dock. Thrall assembled his boarding team, checking his weapon one more time. Not that he'd need it. Humans were soft, couldn't even breathe half the atmospheres in the galaxy without assistance. The airlock hissed open, and they stormed inside. The interior was cramped by Croxian standards, filled with human technology that looked primitive compared to proper galactic equipment. And there, in the pilot seat, sat a young human female in military fatigues. She turned slowly, hands visible, no sudden movements. "This is a Terran Defense Force vessel on authorized transit. I'm Sergeant Lisa Morgan. State your business." Thrall laughed, the sound harsh and grating. "Your business is our business, human. This sector requires inspection of all vessels. Stand down and prepare for cargo search." Lisa stood, and Thrall noticed she was tall for a human, probably around 6 feet. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, and her eyes were steady, calculating. "I'm carrying classified military equipment under Treaty Provision 7-4. I can't permit an authorized search without clearance from Terran Command." "Treaty Provision?" Thrall moved closer, using his full 7-foot height to intimidate. "You humans and your paperwork. We are galactic enforcement. We don't need your permission." His team pushed past her, heading for the cargo bay. Lisa didn't resist, but her jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake. Contact my command. Verify my authorization. It'll take 5 minutes." "Silence." Thrall barked. From the cargo bay, his officer called out. They'd found encrypted data cores, military-grade weapons, and equipment whose purpose they couldn't immediately identify. All violations, as far as Thrall was concerned. Humans weren't authorized for half this technology. "Sergeant Lisa Morgan, you're under arrest for obstruction of enforcement procedures, unauthorized weapons possession, and transport of restricted technology." Lisa's expression didn't change. "I want to make a communication. Under galactic law, I'm entitled to contact my command." Thrall waved a dismissive claw. "Yes, yes. Every species gets their crying call home. Come along." They hauled her back to the station, a massive structure that served as the enforcement hub for 3 sectors. In processing, Lisa was surprisingly calm. She didn't protest when they took her equipment. Didn't argue when they recorded her biometrics. Just kept repeating the same request. "I need to make my authorized communication." Thrall finally agreed, more out of amusement than anything else. He led her to a communication terminal in the holding area. "Make your call, human. Tell your family you'll be detained for a few cycles while we sort this out. Maybe longer if you don't cooperate." Lisa sat down at the terminal and activated a device from her uniform, some kind of encrypted communicator they'd missed. Her fingers moved quickly across holographic keys, entering codes Thrall didn't recognize. The encryption was strange, military-grade but using protocols he'd never seen. The call connected. No video, just audio. A professional voice answered immediately. "Actual, this is home plate. Authentication required." Lisa spoke clearly, no emotion. "Home plate, this is Morgan, Echo 79er. Code Amber. I've been detained by Galactic Enforcement, Threshold Sector Station Gamma. Requesting immediate escalation and treaty verification." There was a pause. Then the voice came back, and Thrall heard something in it that made his scales itch. "Echo 79er, home plate confirms Code Amber. Escalation protocols active. Stand by for extraction. Do not resist detention. Home plate out." The call ended. Lisa leaned back, looking directly at Thrall for the first time with something like pity in her eyes. "You should have verified my credentials." Thrall laughed again, but it sounded forced even to his own ears. Extraction? From a galactic enforcement station? Your people are delusional. Lisa just shrugged and allowed herself to be led to a holding cell. She sat on the bench, composed and waiting. Thrall returned to the command center, already preparing his report. Another routine arrest of a human who didn't understand galactic law. Command would be pleased. 40 minutes later, every alarm on the station started screaming at once. The tactical officer's voice cracked with panic. Commander. Contact. Large vessel, human configuration, dropping from FTL at extreme close range. They're inside our defense perimeter. Thrall rushed to the display screen. His blood ran cold. A human dreadnought hung in space, so close he could see the weapons ports opening along its hull. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of their station, bristling with enough firepower to crack a moon. Humans weren't supposed to have ships like this. Intelligence said they were decades away from this level of technology. The communication channel activated automatically, priority override. A human woman's face appeared on screen, her uniform crisp, her expression carved from ice. This is Captain Rebecca Hayes of the Terran Defense Force ship Hammer of Dawn. You are currently holding one of my soldiers. I want Sergeant Morgan released immediately, and I want the credentials and names of every officer involved in her arrest. You have 10 minutes to comply. Thrall found his voice. This is a galactic enforcement station. You can't threaten us. Your soldier violated. 8 minutes, Captain Hayes interrupted. Her eyes were hard as diamonds. I suggest you start moving, Commander. And I suggest you start praying your paperwork is in order. The screen went dark. Thrall stared at the dreadnought on tactical display, watching weapon systems come online one by one. That phone call. That simple phone call. What had he done? Station Chief Vorin burst into the command center, his scales flushed purple with panic. He'd been in a diplomatic meeting when the alarm started, and now he stood frozen, staring at the tactical display showing the human dreadnought hovering like a predator outside their windows. What is that thing doing here? Vorin's voice cracked. Thrall, what did you do? Thrall tried to maintain his composure, but sweat was forming under his armor plating. We arrested a human soldier, sir. Standard procedure. She was carrying unauthorized equipment. Unauthorized? Vorin pulled up the arrest report on his personal display, his claws moving frantically. Did you verify her credentials? Did you check the treaty database? She's human, sir. Their protocols are always. Always what, Commander? Vorin's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Always valid? Always properly documented? Always backed by warships we were told didn't exist. The communication channel crackled to life again. Captain Hayes' face reappeared, and Thrall noticed something chilling. She wasn't angry. She wasn't shouting. She was calm, professional, like she'd done this 100 times before. 7 minutes, Commander Thrall. I'm watching the clock. Vorin shoved Thrall aside and took over the communication. Captain Hayes, I am Station Chief Vorin. I apologize for any misunderstanding. We can resolve this diplomatically. Surely you don't want an interstellar incident over a simple procedural matter. Hayes tilted her head slightly. Station Chief, this stopped being a procedural matter when your commander arrested one of my soldiers without verifying her authorization. This stopped being simple when he ignored her requests to contact her command. And this became an incident the moment Sergeant Morgan activated her distress beacon 37 minutes ago. Distress beacon? Vorin pulled up more data, his hands shaking now. That call she made wasn't to her family, if that's what you thought. Hayes leaned forward. Every Terran Defense Force soldier carries a direct line to their command structure. Code Amber means illegal detention. The moment Sergeant Morgan transmitted that code, it pinged our command network, our diplomatic corps, and our treaty verification systems. Within 90 seconds, we had legal confirmation that her arrest violated 6 different treaties your government signed. Thrall felt his stomach drop. 6 treaties. Not one. Not a gray area. 6 clear violations. Hayes continued, her voice still terrifyingly calm. My ship was already in this sector on patrol. We were 42 minutes away when the beacon activated. So here I am, Commander. And I'll ask you one more time, where is my soldier? Vorin was already pulling up Lisa's actual credentials on the main screen. His face went from purple to white as the data loaded. Special Operations Clearance. Diplomatic Immunity Status. Authorized for classified equipment transport. Every single item in her cargo bay was listed, documented, and approved by 3 separate galactic authorities. Get her, Vorin whispered to Thrall. Get her now and bring her to the command center. Sir, we can't just. Now, Commander. Thrall ran. His pride was screaming at him to stand his ground, but survival instinct was stronger. He reached the holding cells in record time, practically tearing the door off its hinges. Lisa sat exactly where he'd left her, looking utterly relaxed. Sergeant Morgan, Thrall's voice came out strangled. There's been a misunderstanding. If you'll come with me. No. Thrall blinked. Excuse me? Lisa stood slowly, stretching like she'd been taking a nap. I said no. Captain Hayes gave you 10 minutes. I'm curious to see what happens when the timer runs out. You can't be serious. Your captain will attack the station. Maybe. Lisa walked to the cell door, stopping just inches from Thrall. Or maybe she'll do what she did to the Viridian pirates last year. You heard about that? Thrall had. Everyone had. A human patrol ship had been seized by pirates in neutral space. The Terran response had been excessive. They tracked down every pirate ship, every supply depot, every person involved. Not to kill them, humans had rules about that, but to systematically dismantle their entire operation. It took 3 weeks. The pirates who surrendered early got trials. The ones who didn't, well, space was big and full of debris. That was different, Thrall said weakly. Those were criminals. And what am I, Commander? Lisa's eyes were hard. You arrested me. Put me in a cell. Didn't verify my papers. Didn't check the treaties. Didn't follow a single proper procedure. So what does that make you? Before Thrall could answer, the entire station shuddered. Not from weapons fire, from something passing nearby at incredible speed. Alarms blared again as the tactical sensors registered what had just happened. Captain Hayes' voice came over station-wide communication, ensuring everyone heard. That was a kinetic impactor, tungsten core, traveling at 0.3 light speed. It passed 17 meters from your station's primary hull. Your shields didn't even register it because it was moving too fast for your sensors to track. The math on that shot is very precise, Station Chief. We hit what we aim at. Vorin's voice came over Thrall's personal communicator, barely coherent. Bring her up here. Now. Before that madwoman turns us into debris. Thrall looked at Lisa, who was smiling now. Shall we go meet your station chief? I'd hate for Captain Hayes to get impatient. She's very punctual about deadlines. They walked through the corridors, and Thrall noticed other officers and personnel staring. Word had spread fast. Everyone knew the humans had come for their soldier. Everyone had seen that warning shot. 3 docked vessels had been damaged by the shockwave alone. The projectile hadn't even touched them, just passed close enough that the displaced particles had sandblasted their hulls. In the command center, Vorin was frantically communicating with the Galactic Council, trying to get diplomatic intervention. But the responses were all the same: verify the arrest, check the treaties, don't escalate. Lisa walked in like she owned the place. She even nodded politely to Vorin. Station Chief. I believe there's been a misunderstanding about my authorization status. Vorin pulled up her credentials on the main display. Sergeant Morgan, I deeply apologize. Your documentation is in perfect order. This arrest was a mistake. You're free to go immediately. Thank you. Lisa tapped her communicator. Home plate, this is Morgan. Station has acknowledged the error. Standing by. Captain Hayes responded instantly. Copy that, Morgan. We're sending a shuttle. Diplomatic team is already en route to handle the formal complaint. See you in 20 minutes. They'd held her for almost 2 hours, but Earth's diplomatic response team would arrive in 20 minutes. Thrall realized with growing horror that the humans must have scrambled every asset in range the moment that beacon went off. The dreadnought, the diplomats, probably lawyers too. Lisa stood calmly, waiting for her ride. No one spoke. The entire command center watched the human shuttle approach, dock, and deploy a team of very serious-looking people in civilian suits carrying data tablets and recording equipment. One of them, a tall man with gray hair, walked directly to Vorin. Station Chief, I'm Daniel Rivers, Terran Diplomatic Corps. We need to discuss your enforcement procedures and several treaty violations that occurred today. Vorin just nodded, defeated. Lisa walked to the shuttle, pausing at the door to look back at Thrall one last time. You should have made the call, Commander. Would have saved everyone a lot of trouble. Then she was gone, and Thrall was left standing in the ruins of his career, watching that massive dreadnought turn slowly in space. The humans hadn't been bluffing. They never bluffed about their soldiers. The Galactic Council chamber was chaos. Representatives from 40 different species shouted over each other, their translation devices creating a cacophony of competing languages and demands. At the center of it all sat the human delegation, calm and organized, while everyone else panicked. Ambassador Catherine Wells sat with her hands folded, waiting for the noise to die down. She'd seen this before. The galaxy always underestimated humanity, then acted shocked when Earth responded exactly as their treaty said they would. Beside her, Admiral Michael Grant reviewed data on his tablet, occasionally making notes. They had time. They had evidence. They had the moral high ground. The council speaker, an elderly Valerian named Corpus, finally restored order by cutting all microphones except his own. This emergency session will come to order. The human delegation has filed formal complaints against the Galactic Enforcement Patrol regarding the illegal detention of one of their soldiers. Ambassador Wells, you may present your case. Catherine stood, activating the chamber's holographic display. Thank you, Speaker Corpus. What happened 3 days ago in Threshold Sector wasn't an isolated incident. It was the inevitable result of systematic disregard for human protocols and treaty obligations. The display showed Lisa Morgan's arrest footage from the station's own security cameras. The council watched as Thrall dismissed her credentials, ignored her requests, and mocked her insistence on proper procedure. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Sergeant Morgan was in lawful transit through disputed space under Navigation Treaty 42, which your governments ratified 8 years ago. She carried proper authorization for all equipment. She held diplomatic immunity under the Military Personnel Protection Act. Commander Thrall violated 6 separate treaties, but more importantly, he never even checked if he was breaking them. A Kraxian representative stood, mandibles clicking aggressively. The commander made an error in judgment, yes, but the human response was disproportionate. You deployed a warship. You threatened the Galactic Enforcement Station. Admiral Grant rose slowly. He was in his 60s, gray-haired and distinguished, and he'd been in the military longer than some species in the room had been in space. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen real war. Disproportionate? Let me tell you about proportion. He activated a new display. This is Earth, year 1950. This soldier was captured in a war. His government forgot about him. He died in a prison camp, alone, believing no one cared. This woman, year 1973, same story. This man, year 1991, abandoned by bureaucracy. Shall I continue? I have 10,000 more examples. The chamber went silent. Humanity learned a lesson written in the graves of forgotten soldiers. When we went to the stars, we made a promise. Every person wearing our uniform carries a beacon. Not a tracking device. Not a radio. A promise. If you're detained, someone will come. If you're in danger, someone will answer. If you're forgotten, we will burn worlds to find you. The Kraxian representative tried to interrupt. That's barbaric. No, Catherine cut in sharply. Barbaric is arresting someone and not verifying if it's legal. Barbaric is dismissing treaty obligations because you think a species is too new to matter. Barbaric is assuming we won't defend our people because your species has forgotten what loyalty means. She pulled up another document. This is what we call the ledger. Every illegal detention. Every treaty violation. Every time one of your enforcement officers decided human protocols were optional. There are 93 entries in the last 5 years. 93 times we filed complaints, requested investigations, asked for proper training. How many times did you act? Silence. That's right. 0. So when Sergeant Morgan activated her beacon, she wasn't calling for rescue from danger. She was activating a promise. A promise that humanity keeps, regardless of cost. Daniel Rivers, the diplomatic officer who'd arrived at the station, stood to add his findings. Our investigation shows a pattern. Galactic enforcement officers routinely ignore human documentation. They assume our treaties are negotiable. They treat our soldiers as second-class citizens. Commander Thrall isn't an exception. He's the rule. The evidence was damning. Footage from dozens of incidents. Audio recordings of enforcement officers laughing about human complaints. Training materials that didn't even mention updated human treaties. The council representatives watched their perfect system get torn apart piece by piece. Speaker Corpus looked ill. What does Earth want in terms of resolution? Catherine's expression didn't change. Commander Thrall and his boarding team will be stripped of credentials and barred from enforcement duties. Station Chief Vorin will be removed from command for failing to maintain updated treaty databases. The entire Threshold Sector Enforcement Division will undergo mandatory retraining on human protocols, conducted by our personnel. And most importantly, the Galactic Enforcement Patrol will implement real-time treaty verification systems so this never happens again. A Silverian representative, known for their diplomatic nature, spoke up gently. Ambassador, these demands are extensive. Surely we can negotiate. No. Admiral Grant's voice was flat. You don't negotiate with us about our soldiers. Ever. You either agree to fix the system, or we handle enforcement in our own sectors ourselves. Your choice. The threat was clear. If galactic enforcement couldn't be trusted, humanity would withdraw from those treaties and establish their own patrol zones. That would fragment the entire enforcement structure that had maintained peace for centuries. Back at the Threshold Station, Thrall sat in a small office, watching the council proceedings on a public feed. His career was over. They'd already confiscated his credentials. His family name would be associated with this failure for generations. But what really haunted him was the footage they kept showing of Lisa Morgan, sitting calmly in her cell, waiting for rescue she knew would come. She'd never doubted. Not for a second. His second officer entered quietly. Commander, former commander, your transport is ready. They're sending you to a civilian post processing shipping manifests. I know. Thrall didn't look up. Did you watch the council session? Yes, sir. The admiral said they'd burn worlds to find their people. Did he mean that literally? The officer hesitated. I looked up human history, sir. When they say things like that, they mean it. They really did fight wars over single prisoners. They really do track down everyone who harms their people. It's not a threat. It's just who they are. Thrall finally looked up. We thought they were weak because they're new to space. But they've been fighting each other for thousands of years. They learned lessons in blood that we've forgotten in our centuries of peace. What lesson is that, sir? That loyalty isn't a weakness. It's the most terrifying strength a species can have. On the Hammer of Dawn, Lisa sat in the officer's mess with Captain Hayes, drinking coffee and watching the council proceedings on a monitor. Hayes shook her head with a slight smile. You know this is going to be taught at the academy, right? The arrest that changed galactic enforcement. Lisa shrugged. I just followed protocol. Made the call. Waited for extraction. That's exactly why it works, Hayes said. Because every soldier knows someone will answer. Every captain knows they'll be backed up. Every admiral knows Earth won't abandon them to politics. It's not complicated. Think they'll actually change things? Hayes looked at the monitor, where the council was voting on Earth's demands. The votes were coming in overwhelmingly in favor. No one wanted to fight humanity over this. No one wanted to risk fragmenting the enforcement system. They'll change, Hayes said. Because they finally understand. We're not aggressive. We're not paranoid. We're just done watching our people get treated like they don't matter. And if that makes us scary, good. Fear keeps our soldiers safer than treaties ever did. Lisa raised her coffee cup in a mock toast. To making one phone call that started a galactic incident. Hayes clinked her cup against Lisa's. To promises kept. Outside the window, stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Somewhere out there, other human soldiers wore their beacons, knowing that if they ever needed help, someone would come. Always. That was the promise. And humanity never broke their promises. The tribunal chamber was smaller than the main council hall, designed for serious judicial proceedings rather than political theater. Commander Thrall sat alone at the defendant's table, his once pristine uniform stripped of all rank insignia. Across from him, the human legal team arranged their materials with quiet efficiency. They didn't need to posture or threaten. The evidence spoke for itself. Judge Advocate Melissa Carter led the prosecution. She was in her 40s, dark-skinned with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd prosecuted war crimes on Earth before joining the Terran Diplomatic Corps, and this case was, in her words, disappointingly straightforward. The three-judge panel consisted of a Valerian, a neutral Silverian, and surprisingly, a human. Earth had insisted on mixed representation. They wanted no one claiming bias when this was over. Melissa stood, addressing the panel. Your Honors, this case is simple. Commander Thrall detained Sergeant Lisa Morgan without verifying her credentials, without checking applicable treaties, and without following proper enforcement procedures. When Sergeant Morgan requested communication with her command, a right guaranteed under galactic law, he granted it only as a mockery, never imagining she had legitimate military backing. She activated the display, showing Thrall's own words from the security footage. "Make your call, human. Tell your family you'll be detained for a few cycles while we sort this out." The judges watched impassively as the footage continued, showing Lisa's professional distress call and Thrall's dismissive laughter afterward. "Commander Thrall didn't just make a mistake," Melissa continued. "He made an assumption. He assumed human protocols didn't matter. That human treaties were suggestions. That a human soldier was alone and helpless, regardless of what her paperwork said. This assumption cost him his career. But more importantly, it revealed a systemic problem that has cost the Galactic Enforcement Patrol its credibility." Thrall's appointed defender, a Craxian advocate named Pelix, rose to speak. "Your Honors, my client acknowledges errors in judgment. However, the human response was militarily aggressive and diplomatically damaging. A simple complaint through proper channels would have." "Proper channels?" Melissa's voice cut like a knife. "Let me show you proper channels." The display changed, showing a database of human complaints filed over the past 5 years. 93 incidents. Each one properly documented, filed through official channels, requesting investigation and reform. The judges leaned forward, reading through the entries. Incident 47, Melissa read aloud. "Human merchant vessel detained for 8 days despite valid transit papers. Complaint filed. Response, pending investigation. No action taken." Incident 62, human scientist arrested for possession of research equipment clearly authorized under Scientific Exchange Treaty 19. Complaint filed. Response, officer received verbal warning. Incident 79, human courier physically assaulted during unwarranted search. Complaint filed. Response, matter under review. She turned to face Pelix directly. "We used proper channels. For 5 years. Nothing changed. So when Sergeant Morgan activated her beacon, she wasn't circumventing the system. She was using the only system that actually works, the one where humanity protects its own people because no one else will." The human judge, a retired military officer named Thomas Bradford, spoke for the first time. His voice was gravelly with age. "Advocate Pelix, let me explain something about human military culture. When a soldier is in trouble, response time is measured in minutes, not months. Captain Hayes had her ship moving within 90 seconds of that distress call. Not because she's aggressive. Because that's what we do. It's not optional. It's not negotiable. It's doctrine written in the blood of too many forgotten soldiers." The Valerian judge, Chief Magistrate Quelix, raised a claw for attention. This tribunal understands human concerns about their military personnel. However, the deployment of a warship seems standard. Admiral Grant's voice came from the gallery. He'd been sitting quietly, observing, but now he stood. "Your Honor, may I approach?" Quelix nodded, clearly curious. Grant walked forward, pulling up new data on his personal tablet and syncing it to the display. "This is our response protocol. It's not classified. It's actually published in 17 languages on our diplomatic servers, freely available to anyone who bothers to read it." The display showed a flowchart, clear and simple. Code Amber, illegal detention of military personnel. Automatic response, nearest military asset deploys immediately. Diplomatic team scrambles. Treaty verification runs automatically. Assessment team prepares for extraction. All within the first 5 minutes. He looked at each judge in turn. "We're not hiding this. We're not being sneaky. We told everyone exactly what would happen if they illegally detained our soldiers. Captain Hayes followed her orders to the letter. The only surprise here is that Commander Thrall didn't bother reading the manual." Thrall's defender tried again. The commander was following standard enforcement procedures. "Outdated procedures," Melissa interrupted. "The tribunal needs to see this." She pulled up the enforcement training materials used in the Threshold sector. These training documents are 6 years old. They don't include any updates on human treaties from the past 3 years. Commander Thrall and his entire division were operating with obsolete information because Station Chief Vorin never implemented the mandatory updates. The Silverian judge, Mediator Hennis, spoke gently. "Are you suggesting this was a failure of leadership rather than individual misconduct?" "Both," Melissa said firmly. Commander Thrall failed to verify credentials. That's individual misconduct. But Station Chief Vorin created an environment where such failures were inevitable by not maintaining updated systems. That's leadership failure. And above them, the Galactic Enforcement Patrol failed to ensure their personnel actually knew current laws. That's institutional failure. She pulled up one final document. This is the Enforcement Manual section on human military personnel. It's 43 pages long, detailed, specific. It explains the beacon system. It lists the treaties. It explicitly warns officers to verify credentials before detention. Commander Thrall never read it. Station Chief Vorin never enforced reading it. And the patrol never checked if anyone was following it. The evidence was overwhelming. The judges huddled briefly, then Chief Magistrate Quelix spoke. This tribunal finds Commander Thrall guilty of negligent enforcement, treaty violations, and failure to follow proper procedures. His credentials are permanently revoked. He is barred from any enforcement position within Galactic Authority. Thrall's head dropped. He'd expected it, but hearing it made it real. Furthermore, Quelix continued, Station Chief Vorin is removed from command, effective immediately, for failure to maintain operational standards. The Threshold Sector Enforcement Division will undergo complete restructuring and retraining under joint supervision, including human oversight. The Silverian judge added, the Galactic Enforcement Patrol is ordered to implement real-time treaty verification systems at all checkpoints within 6 months. Failure to comply will result in suspension of enforcement authority in human-adjacent sectors. It was everything Earth had demanded, and more. The tribunal wasn't just punishing individuals, they were reforming the entire system. After the ruling, Melissa found Admiral Grant in the corridor outside. Think this will actually change things? Grant watched through the window as Thrall was escorted out, his career in ruins. It'll change because they're scared now. They thought humans were soft because we're new. Now they know we're dangerous because we remember. Every slight, every violation, every soldier they dismissed. We remember all of it. The ledger, Melissa said quietly. The ledger, Grant confirmed. Let them think it's just a list. Let them wonder what else we're keeping track of. Fear is a better teacher than legislation. Down in the station's lower levels, workers were already installing new computer systems, human-designed treaty verification terminals that would flag any arrest that might violate current agreements. Other stations across the sector were receiving the same upgrades. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. Humanity didn't need to be the strongest species or the oldest civilization. They just needed to be the ones who kept their promises and remembered when others broke theirs. And in that lesson, written in Thrall's ruined career and the patrol's humiliation, was a simple truth that would echo across the stars. Never underestimate a species that refuses to abandon its own. 6 months had passed since the tribunal, and the Threshold sector looked very different. The enforcement station now had a permanent human liaison office, complete with staff who reviewed every arrest before it became official. The treaty verification terminals blinked green or red at every checkpoint, impossible to ignore. And most notably, human instructors walked the corridors, teaching enforcement officers how things actually worked now. Sergeant Lisa Morgan stood in front of a classroom filled with 30 nervous Galactic Enforcement recruits. Some were Croxian, like Thrall had been. Others were Valeian, Silverian, even a few species she'd never encountered before. They all watched her with a mixture of respect and fear. Good morning, Lisa said, her voice calm and professional. I'm Sergeant Morgan. Yes, I'm that Sergeant Morgan. The one whose arrest became the most expensive mistake in enforcement history. Today, we're going to talk about why that happened, and how you're going to make sure it never happens again. She activated the display behind her, showing the now famous footage of her arrest. The recruits had all seen it, but watching it in person, with her standing right there, hit differently. Commander Thrall made 3 critical errors. First, he assumed. He assumed I didn't have proper authorization because I was human and we're new to space. Second, he didn't verify. Every piece of equipment in my cargo bay was documented, but he never checked the database. Third, he dismissed my protocols as unimportant. That phone call he laughed about? That ended his career. A young Croxian recruit raised a claw hesitantly. Sergeant, with respect, don't you think the human response was extreme? A whole warship for one soldier? Lisa smiled, and several recruits shifted uncomfortably. Let me tell you a story. Earth, year 2009. A merchant ship captain named Phillips was captured by pirates off the coast of Somalia. He was one man on a lifeboat, surrounded by hostiles with automatic weapons. The United States Navy deployed a destroyer, assembled a SEAL team, and set up a command center involving 3 separate military branches. For one merchant captain. They killed the pirates and brought him home. She advanced the display, showing more historical examples. Year 1976, Entebbe Airport. Terrorists held over 100 hostages. Israel sent commandos on a mission that traveled thousands of miles into hostile territory. They rescued the hostages. Year 1993, Mogadishu. When American soldiers were trapped, the military sent everything: helicopters, ground vehicles, special operations. They didn't leave anyone behind. The classroom was silent. Lisa let that sink in before continuing. We're not extreme. We're consistent. For thousands of years, across every culture, Earth's military forces have operated on one principle: you don't abandon your people. When we went to the stars, we didn't leave that principle behind. We encoded it into our law, our doctrine, our technology. Every soldier carries a beacon because history taught us that bureaucracy forgets, but loyalty doesn't. Another recruit, a Silverian, spoke up. But Sergeant, how do we balance enforcement duties with these protocols? What if a human actually is breaking the law? Excellent question. Lisa pulled up a new display showing the current procedures. See this? Treaty Verification Terminal. Before you even approach a human vessel, you scan their credentials here. Takes 15 seconds. Green light means they're authorized. Red light means there's a problem, and you request human liaison assistance before proceeding. Yellow light means unclear, so you make contact and verify through proper channels. She walked among the desks, making eye contact with each recruit. Commander Thrall's mistake wasn't arresting a human. His mistake was arresting first and checking never. If he'd spent 15 seconds at this terminal, he'd still have his career. Captain Hayes would never have deployed. The tribunal would never have happened. Simple verification would have prevented everything. The training session continued for another hour, covering specific scenarios and protocols. Lisa noticed the recruits taking extensive notes. They were scared, and that was good. Fear made people careful. Careful people didn't make career-ending mistakes. After class, Lisa walked through the station corridors toward the liaison office. Workers nodded respectfully as she passed. Some of them had been there during her arrest, had watched the Hammer of Dawn arrive, had seen their commanders stripped of rank. The story had spread throughout the entire sector. Everyone knew her face now. In the liaison office, she found Captain Hayes reviewing incident reports. The captain had been assigned as the senior human liaison for the sector, overseeing the integration of new protocols. So far, there had been exactly 0 illegal detentions of human personnel. The system was working. How's the new batch of recruits? Hayes asked without looking up. Terrified and attentive. Perfect combination. Lisa poured herself coffee from the human standard maker they'd installed. The Croxian kid asked if our response was extreme. Hayes smiled. What did you tell him? Showed him the history. Let Earth's track record speak for itself. Good. They need to understand this isn't new behavior. We've always been like this. Space didn't change us, it just gave us a bigger area to operate in. Lisa's communicator chirped. A message from Admiral Grant, now serving as the human military attaché to the Galactic Council. She read it and laughed. What? Hayes asked. The Viridian sector just requested human assistance setting up their own version of our beacon system. Apparently, after watching what happened here, they decided their soldiers deserve the same protection. Hayes leaned back in her chair, considering that. Interesting. We didn't ask them to copy us. No, but they're smart enough to recognize a good system when they see one. Admiral Grant says 3 other species have made similar requests. They want to know how we track our people, how we maintain response readiness, how we ensure someone always answers the call. We're not giving them the full technical specs, I hope. No, just the concept. The diplomatic corps is positioning it as mutual protection agreements. If they adopt similar systems, it raises the standard for everyone. Makes it harder for enforcement to play favorites or ignore protocols. Across the galaxy, the ripple effects of that one arrest continued spreading. Military academies on a dozen worlds now taught case studies about the Morgan incident. Enforcement training programs had been completely rewritten. Even civilian shipping companies started adopting beacon systems, realizing that Earth's approach to protecting their people was actually brilliant risk management. In a quiet bar near the station's commercial district, former Commander Thrall sat alone, nursing a drink. He worked in cargo processing now, checking manifests and routing shipments. Boring, meaningless work that anyone could do. His family name, once respected, was now synonymous with catastrophic failure. A human merchant captain sat down at the bar next to him, ordered a drink, and glanced over. "You're Thrall, aren't you? The commander from the Morgan arrest." Thrall's scales flushed with shame. "Yes." "Here to mock me?" The captain shook his head. "Actually, no. I wanted to say thank you." Thrall blinked in confusion. "Thank me? For what?" "Before your incident, I got stopped by enforcement every other trip. They'd tear through my cargo, question my permits, delay me for hours. Cost me contracts, cost me money. Since the reforms? 15-second credential check, green light, I'm on my way. You made things better for every human out here, even if you didn't mean to." The captain raised his glass in a mocking toast. "So thanks, Commander. Your failure made my job easier." He left before Thrall could respond. The former commander sat there, understanding finally settling in. He hadn't just destroyed his own career. He'd fundamentally changed how the galaxy treated humanity. Earth had used his mistake as a lever to force reforms that had been ignored for years. Back at the liaison office, Lisa stood at the window, watching ships come and go from the station. Somewhere out there, other human soldiers wore their beacons, carried their credentials, trusted that someone would come if they called. Hayes joined her at the window. "Ever regret making that call? You could have waited, tried to resolve it diplomatically." Lisa shook her head. "I followed my training. The beacon exists for exactly this situation, illegal detention by authorities who think they're above the rules. Besides, look what happened. The system got fixed. How many future soldiers won't get arrested illegally because Thrall arrested me?" That's a very optimistic way to look at nearly starting an interstellar incident. "Captain Hayes, with respect, we didn't nearly start anything. We clearly stated our protocols. We published our response doctrines. We signed treaties in good faith. They chose to ignore all of it. What happened was them discovering that human promises aren't negotiable." Hayes nodded slowly. "The Admiral calls it aggressive compliance. We follow every rule, meet every treaty obligation, honor every agreement. But when someone breaks those rules against us, we respond with overwhelming force and legal precision." "Sounds about right. You know they're writing this up for the Academy, right? Future officers will study the Morgan incident as textbook crisis response." Lisa groaned. "Great. My name in history books for getting arrested. Could be worse. You could be Thrall, whose name is now synonymous with career-ending incompetence." They both laughed at that. Outside the window, a human patrol ship docked smoothly, its crew no doubt carrying the same beacons, trusting the same promise. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Touch one human soldier, and discover that Earth doesn't measure justice in individuals or incidents or diplomatic notes. They measure it in warships, in reformed systems, in promises kept across light years. And somewhere, in every human military installation across the stars, new recruits heard the same words on their first day: "Make the call. Someone will come." Always. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a boast. It was simply the truth. And now, finally, the galaxy believed it.